Buckle up. We begin with a Fox News alert. It will take, well, the next 10 hours to give you all the news we have. We're trying to break it down as best we can. We have two breaking news stories we are tracking tonight. First, just moments ago, we received definitive evidence that the corrupt, the compromised, congenital liar, that guy that I've been telling you about, Adam Schiff, he has willfully been deceiving you, we, the American people, for years. Transcripts he's been hiding from the House Intel Committee's witch hunt into Russian, quote, interference have finally been released, but thanks to the Director of National Intelligence, and Attorney General Barr, Adam Schiff is being exposed as being a bigger liar than we even thought. Also, documents revealing bombshell new information on what Barack Obama knew about deep state spying. He knew a lot more than we ever knew. We have those details coming up. Also breaking tonight, the Department of Justice and Attorney General Barr rightly have dropped all charges against Lieutenant General Michael Flynn. And that means soon his nearly 4-year nightmare and ordeal will be over, and only if the presiding federal judge, Emmett Sullivan, agrees with the DOJ's motion. Flynn was, we've told you for years, and is an innocent man. He's an honorable man, a 33-year veteran who served his country with distinction. But because of his support for President Trump, he, like the president, many other people around the president, they were subjected to years of total hell by a corrupt group of dirty cops, to quote Joe DeGeneva. First time he said it on this show, I flinched. They're dirty cops. All my family was in law enforcement. That's not how we believe cops act or FBI acts. And you know what? It was only 1%, not the rank and file. What happened to General Flynn is just the tip of the iceberg. We're going to lay out a comprehensive timeline of this corruption. We will detail the very real crimes that we believe were committed by these few high-ranking bad actors. We'll call out what is the media mob, the acting cheerleaders for government malfeasance. They were going after phony stories like Russia collusion and Ukraine quid pro quos, ignored Hillary's dirty Russian dossier, Russian disinformation from the get-go. They ignored you're not getting the million unless you fire the prosecutor paying my inexperienced son millions, just to go after Donald Trump. It has been a two-tiered justice system, two-tiered coverage in your media mob. The Attorney General is now speaking out. We have part of that interview he gave earlier tonight. Flynn's attorney, Sidney Powell, will join us. The great one, Mark Levin, will weigh in. And later, wow, thank God she's free, we will have an exclusive interview with Shelley Luther. She was the salon owner that was told, you apologize to the government or you're going to jail. What? Far left-wing judge put her behind bars, slapped her with a $7,000 fine because she wanted her employees to be able to feed their kids, and she refused to apologize for trying to feed her children and those that work for her. She's a hero for standing up to that judge. First, we got to address what is the foundation of this great republic. What is it? Our Constitution, liberty, justice, equal justice under the law, equal application of our laws. People that abuse power, people that are corrupt, the powerful tools of intelligence misused, people with agendas. In this case, what was an attempt at stopping Donald Trump from being president and then undoing an election. In other words, they didn't like the choice of you, we, the people. So they did everything in their power, a lot of corrupt things and illegal things, to take Donald Trump down. They've tried ever since he was elected and even before he was elected. Shortly after the DOJ's announcement, Lieutenant General Flynn, he tweeted out this video of his grandson. It reminds us that there are good people and that there is hope, and that sometimes with good people in power, justice can and will prevail. Take a look.
I allegiance to the flag, United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, of liberty and justice.
All right. Maybe he could teach Joe Biden how to say things. I don't know. But he got it right. Good job. Looks like General Flynn's grandson understands the core American principle better than some of these corrupt bad actors who tried to persecute his grandfather. Let's take a look at how we got here. Let's start in early January 2017. Before President Trump was even sworn into office, the FBI determined Flynn had done nothing wrong, nothing. In fact, Comey's Crossfire Hurricane investigation found no evidence of collusion from anyone associated with Donald Trump. Thanks to a recent document discovery, we learned that by January of 2017, there was no derogatory material on Flynn in the FBI's files, zero in the Defense Intel Agency files, zero derogatory material as it relates to material in the CIA files. And we know that by January 4, 2017, the case against Flynn was supposed to be closed. That is, until the FBI leadership on the infamous 7th floor got involved. That same day, Peter Strzok pleaded, don't close out the case. And in comes Jim Comey. A few weeks later, fourth day into the Trump administration, Strzok is asking, quote, what is our goal? Truth, admission, or to get General Flynn to lie so that then we can prosecute him and get him fired or get him fired? Those words should never come out of anybody in the FBI, ever. The goal should be justice and truth always. That's not a question that he should have ever asked. The fact that he asked it and got answers is scary. That quote, quite literally, is the definition of a perjury trap. But in Jim Comey's FBI, well, it was all means to an end. January 24th, Mr. Higher Loyalty, super patriot himself, Jim Comey, he directed his agents to ambush General Flynn at the White House, and as he bragged about, to take advantage of the chaos in the White House, something he wouldn't do in the Obama-Bush administrations or get away with, and push aside all due process, which would be going through the White House General Counsel. In other words, Comey's disreputable right-hand man, Deputy Director McCabe, well, he just told Flynn, oh, you don't need a lawyer. That was a lie, too. It was all a setup. And Comey sent them in. And like the idiotic, pompous jackass that Jim Comey bragged about, well, he bragged about the whole dirty trick on camera. Now, think about this. Does this sound like a guy that has a higher loyalty to truth, honor, law enforcement, the Constitution of the United States? Because to me, he's the dirty cop that Joe DeGenova warned us about.
You look at this White House now, and it's hard to imagine two FBI agents ending up in the same room. How did that happen?
I sent them. Something I probably wouldn't have done or maybe gotten away with in a more organized investigation, a more organized administration, in the George W. Bush administration, for example, or the Obama administration. And in both of those administrations, there was process. And so if the FBI wanted to send agents into the White House itself to interview a senior official, you would work through the White House counsel, and there'd be discussions and approvals and who would be there. And I thought, it's early enough, let's just send a couple guys over.
Yeah, you think that's funny, Jim? Really? This is a 33-year veteran of this country, Jim Comey. Really? You don't need a lawyer? You're sending him in? You're setting him up? You're doing things you wouldn't do to anybody else? Wow. Jim Comey was using the Logan Act, 1799 law that nobody's ever been prosecuted under, ever, to squeeze Lieutenant General Flynn. Nobody ever found guilty of violating that obscure law since 1799. And get this, the agents that conducted the ambush, they didn't think that Flynn was lying. We don't have the original 302 notes that Strzok and Page are talking about seemingly altering later on. Because in search of a crime, you got people like Strzok and Page doing the bidding of Comey and McCabe. They made significant revisions to the initial 302. In other words, they changed the interview notes. They set them up again. And by the way, they invented the perjury trap. That's by saying you don't need a lawyer. Well, what's our goal here? Do we want him to lie? We want to set him up for perjury so he gets prosecuted? And all the while, Comey, McCabe, Rod Rosenstein, and others, they themselves premeditated fraud on the FISA court. Heard that a lot from me over the last 3 years, despite knowing full well that Hillary's bought and paid for dossier, even the New York Toilet Paper Times figured out was likely Russian disinformation from the beginning. Yeah, she paid for Russian interference, and they used it as the basis, the bulk of information on the FISA warrant applications. Oh, by the way, we learned an awful lot in these papers today about that. We'll get to that. And by the way, that was to take away Carter Page's civil liberties and constitutional rights. And in June of 2017, well into the Trump administration, McCabe, Rosenstein, they signed off on the 4th FISA renewal. The only problem is they knew months earlier that it was useless. They had debunked it. They knew it wasn't true. They knew the subsource, after 3 interviews, had said, nah, Steele, that's not accurate. August 2nd, 2017, you have acting AG Rod Rosenstein providing Robert Mueller with a letter detailing the scope of the investigation. Now, that scope consisted of a few dozen baseless charges and a few allegations totally unrelated to collusion. The accusations against General Flynn had previously been debunked by the FBI in early January. Premeditated fraud on a FISA court. They were warned before the October 2016 FISA application. We have in these papers Andrew McCabe admitting, I don't know. He actually said, I don't know if any of it's true. And then he also said, without it, they never would have gotten the FISA application approved. That was what, in part, guys like Adam Schiff have been hiding from we, the people, all this time that we found out today. The Mueller probe was always a political witch hunt. It was a hoax. It was a conspiracy against Donald Trump. This was an attempted coup to undo a duly elected president and take him down and lie about it the whole way. That's why they turned the screws on Flynn. I'm looking at the tweets by idiots like Schiff and Nadler today. Well, he lied. He lied. Well, the FBI didn't think he was lying. But when they finally threatened to put his son in jail after he was bankrupt and after he had to sell his house and he had no more money left at that point to pay the legal fees, and they said they're going to lock up the guy's son, where do I sign? Like the great soldier he was, he dove on the sword to protect his family. That's not lying. That's prosecutorial misconduct. That is abuse of power. That is corruption at the highest levels. Today, the president referred to it as treason. Take a look.
He was targeted by the Obama administration, and he was targeted in order to try and take down a president. And what they've done is a disgrace. I hope a lot of people are going to pay a big price because they're dishonest, crooked people. They're scum, and I say it a lot. They're scum. They're human scum. This should never have happened in this country. The Obama administration, Justice Department, was a disgrace, and they got caught. They got caught. Very dishonest people, but much more than dishonest. It's treason. It's treason.
What they did to General Flynn, Papadopoulos, Roger Stone, Paul Manafort, it was all a means to an end based on phony, bought and paid for Russian lies, and they knew they were Russian lies. Well, they didn't care that they ruined a 33-year veteran's life or his family's life. These bad actors, they wanted to undo your election. Your meaning we, the American people, at all costs. Naturally, the mob and the media, well, they were cheering it on wrongly every step of the way. This is just the tip of the iceberg. Let's take a look.
Did Flynn go rogue, by the way, when he spoke to Russia? Well,
that would be a bigger scandal than almost anything we've ever seen in any other presidential administration.
Oh, breaking news. ABC News' Brian Ross is reporting Michael Flynn promised full cooperation to the Mueller team and is prepared to testify that as a candidate, Donald Trump directed him to make contact with the Russians. Yes!
Next, we're going to get back to Michael Flynn's guilty plea today and how it's made this an historic day here in D.C.
The fact is, Michael Flynn betrayed his country.
Michael Flynn betrayed the nation.
Michael Flynn did nothing wrong. Where are the apologies? Where does he go to get his good name back? Where does he go to get his house back? How does he get his family? How does he get 4 years of his life back? Because those idiots in the media mob, they've been lying, smearing, slandering, besmirching, character assassinating everybody and anybody just in their psychotic rage against Donald Trump, like they're doing right now, like they do every day. Washington Compost, New York Toilet Paper Times, Fake News CNN, Conspiracy TV, MSDNC. They carried the water for all of the lies, conspiracy theories, every hoax, every bad actor. They published every deceptive lie and leak, and they lied to, purposely misled the American people every second, every minute, every hour of every day to bludgeon the president we, the people, elected. Not only is it a disservice to the country, they too must be held accountable. This is dangerous what they have done here. They got awfully close to succeeding on a mountain of lies that they perpetrated because they're too lazy and they're too corrupt to search for real truth. All of those so-called news outlets missed the biggest abuse of power, corruption story they'd ever have in their lifetime. And they peddled conspiracy theories in the end. We on this program, we were searching for truth and justice. We went our own path with our ensemble team. And after a long wait, finally, this is the beginning. Justice is coming. Senator Chuck Grassley said that the Durham investigation into the investigators will likely result in prosecutions. Jim Comey, tick-tock. Hope you're worried tonight. Your corruption has been laid bare for all to see. I will say that our friend Joe DeGenever, who made me flinch on this program, because my family had a lot of police officers. My mom was a prison guard. My dad was a probation officer. I had cousins that were cops. There were two guys in my family that were deity. They made it to the FBI. There was a reverence for them, unlike any other family member. Anyway, tonight, Comey apparently sees himself as a kind of an American hero because he's so delusional on Twitter. He's complaining about the DOJ seeking the truth and dropping its case against Flynn. The DOJ has lost its way, but career people, please stay. America needs you. The country is hungry for honest, competent leadership. He's probably asking his fellow deep staters to stick around. Hopefully he can make a return. I don't think anyone on earth will be taking any advice from the disgraced, fired FBI director. And soon, if there's justice, equal application, well, Jim, I warned you a long time ago. You have the right to remain silent, and I suggest you use it.